The key to making a good After Effects project starts with a well-organized and comprehensive Illustrator or a Photoshop file. For this tutorial, I will be using two different Illustrator files as examples. In our first example, we'll take a look at this focal point logo. To start off, I like to create a bunch of different layers and start labeling them right away. This helps keep me organized as I separate the objects into their own layers. Using short but related words in the label will make them easy to identify at a glance when working in After Effects. For example, my focal object layer will be labeled focal instead of something like word 1. Word 1 isn't an inaccurate label, but at a glance you won't know if word 1 is focal or if it's the other word, point. Now this file is actually ready to go. All the objects are on their own layers, the layers all have labels, and the design of the file is cohesive. If your design does not look cohesive, there are a few steps you can take to bring it all together before sending it to After Effects. The second Illustrator file we'll look at is already separated into different layers and labeled, but it doesn't look so well put together. The first step would be to make sure the objects in the file are a similar style. Here we see they all are a sort of flat, minimalist illustration. Next, we can further improve this by making sure our objects have the same outline and line weight. For this file, though, I decided to get rid of the lines altogether. Now that the objects all look similar at a glance, we can really bring it together by following a color palette. For example, I think the green in the grass is too bright compared to the rest of the file, so I'll change it to a green that I've already used in the cranberries. If we head over to After Effects, we can see how easy our newly organized files are to use. In here, I have the original file. In the original wetlands illustration, I did almost everything correct. The file looks visually cohesive, the objects are mostly separated into layers, I just forgot to label them. You can rename layers in After Effects, but the process is not as intuitive and you really have to look for it. If I had to animate this, I would be stuck clicking on the layers constantly trying to figure out which object is on which layer and what their stacking order is. Here you can see me trying to animate a similar sequence in my edited wetlands illustration versus the original. Not only does labeling make the process a lot easier for you, having multiple object layers gives you a greater control over the animation. For example, I can edit the numbers to fade in and out if I wanted to, instead of just having them appear with the rest of the ribbons. That process is very different than if I had them all on one layer. If my ribbons and my numbers were all on the same layer, I wouldn't be able to do this. Having objects on their own layers lets you control them a lot more when you're animating. So if you wanted to isolate their movement or their appearance, you have that option, and I think it's better to give yourself that option than to kind of just go without it. Like in this wetlands example, I wouldn't have thought to bring in the numbers separately if I hadn't had them on different layers. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.